Representatives. He represents the 11th District, which includes most of Fairfax County and part of Prince William County. Joining us in studio now is Barbara Favola. She is a Virginia State Senator, District 31, which includes portions of Arlington, Fairfax, and Loudoun counties. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Kojo. Thank you for inviting me.
Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a contributing writer for Washington City Paper, and he has been hanging around here for a while, and we'll talk more about that later in the broadcast. Tom Sherwood, welcome.
Good afternoon.
The Virginia First Lady under fire for handing cotton to African-American students who were on a tour of the mansion. It seems like the word clueless may be appropriate here, because I guess she was trying to teach them lessons about slavery, but taught them in probably entirely the wrong way.
Well, Pam Northam and Ralph Northam, who I've talked to in my job as a reporter for a long time, this is a time where Pam Northam and Governor Northam need to be listening more than talking and doing. And that's what he said he's going to try to do. There was a group of, I think, 8th graders. They were touring the old kitchen behind the governor's mansion. Governor McAuliffe started restoring it. There would be a history of the slavery and the African-American influence in that Richmond. And this tour group of young students were going through, and Pam Northam was talking about cotton. And if you know anything about cotton, and I'm from the South Atlanta, you know that if you try to pick it, it's sharp. It cuts your hand. You don't get to wear gloves, and it was a horrible thing. And I think she was trying in her own way to reach out and say how horrible slavery was and how backbreaking the work was. And then she handed out these little cotton puffs. I think that's another word for it. I should know it, being from the South. And at least one, if not two, of the students said they didn't like that because they are African American. It was just an awkward way. Pam Northam apologized. She said she was just trying to talk about the horrors of slavery. May I just say, if I talked too long on this already, this is just the kind of atmosphere with the governor and the accusation or admission of blackface, the attorney general, and all the issues it's been the worst. Somebody said on TV last night, this has been the worst Black History Month in 20 years, maybe, or more.
But Senator Favola?
The sensitivities are that people need to be sensitive, and in this case, maybe you should listen rather than talk.
Well, I do think the governor has stated publicly that he certainly wants to listen. He wants to take this opportunity and turn it into something that can be a teaching moment. Certainly, Virginia has a very painful and I would say shameful history regarding slavery. And we have to reconcile that. We have to come to grips with it. We have to acknowledge how debilitating slavery really has been. And I think that this is a time where leaders in the Commonwealth, both black and white, certainly our black leaders in particular, can stand together and come up with, I think, hopefully meaningful ways of not only understanding our history, but making significant changes. This may be an opportunity to really make a difference with communities of color that have, in my view, have not been given some of the opportunities that other communities have been given, where we have not been taking the proactive steps we should have been taking to make our public schools truly equal in their quality and their ability to educate students. I mean, this is, we can use this opportunity to really make significant and transformational differences in the Commonwealth. And
we're not talking about the past. We're talking about now. The racism is a mutating disease that changes as the time goes by, but the underlying basis of it is still the same. People are denied basic human rights and opportunities that essentially white people have had and others haven't had in this country.
Meanwhile, another scandal involving race, this time in Maryland. This time it's the delegate Marianne Lasanti, referring to a Prince George's County legislative district using the N-word to describe the district. That's Delegate Jay Walker's district. I remember him as a great quarterback at Howard University and in the NFL. But he heard the remark and said he discussed it privately with her, but she has now been censured, and there are people who are asking for Delegate Marianne Lasanti to step down. She says she does not plan to do that.
Well, it's not just people. It's the governor of the state, the censoring by the General Assembly, even the Republican County Executive Barry Glassman of Harford County has called on her to resign. This happened in January. Ovetta Wiggins from the Washington Post was the one who brought this to the public's view. Excellent journalism. It's a good example, if I may so, of what local journalism can be. It happened in January. She was at a bar, one of these after-hour things. And she said, that's not her. That word is not in her vocabulary. Of course it is, because she said it. But then, yesterday there was some videotape of her at the State House, and she seemed to be pulling back from acknowledging that she said it. One reporter asked her, "Were you drunk?" And she said, "No."
It was a bar.
Well, I don't know which the bar was, but I just can't imagine, again, being a Southerner, anyone using probably the worst word that I can think of in some casual way like that. I mean, if she were drunk, then it says something about her under her thought process. If she said it casually, it's talked about, it's insensitive. And to say it about Prince George's County, God knows that county has had enough to deal with. Angela also Brooks, the county executive, has called on her to resign. She's been removed by the House Speaker of all her committee assignments. She's a walking ghost. She'll be only able to vote on the floor of the House, if that. I can't see her staying.
And I don't think we have seen the end of this at this point. But if you have questions for Barbara Favola, Virginia State Senator, you can start calling now, 800-433-8850. Shoot us a tweet at Kojo Show. Email to kojo@wamu.org. You can go to our website, kojoshow.org, or our Facebook page and watch the live video stream of this broadcast. Ask a question or make a comment there. Senator Favola, this week marked the end of the 2019 legislative session in Virginia. It was a session marked by scandals, some of which we've been discussing here, involving the top 3 elected officials in the Commonwealth. The controversies involving Governor Northam, Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, Attorney General Mark Herring. How did that impact your day-to-day work in the legislature?
Well, certainly it was a very challenging session, and lawmakers had to try very hard to stay focused on the business of the state. At the end of the day, it is our job to ensure that state budget passed. It's our job to ensure that necessary legislative efforts are addressed and get passed. So we worked very hard on that, and we also attempted to address the controversies that our 3 top elected officials had surrounded themselves in. Having said all that, we had an incredibly successful session. There was bipartisan support for some key educational initiatives, like a 5% pay raise for teachers. We also put additional money in for need-based financial aid for our students attending higher education. And I was proud I could get child care subsidies extended for low-income moms who were continuing in school. So on some of these real bread and butter issues, we made significant progress. And we had a couple pleasant surprises. We actually passed constitutional language for a redistricting commission. Now, that language has to pass 2 consecutive sessions with an election in between. So if, in fact, it passes the 2020 session after the 2019 election, we can put it on the ballot in 2020.
This is a discussion of the legislative session that just ended in Virginia, but I forgot. Tom Sherwood likes to say this is the politics hour. So my first question Tom's first question to you is probably this. Your seat is up for re-election this year. And though you have a section on your website about the 2019 campaign, Tom, you can finish the question.
You have not declared that you are running in the June 11th primary.
Well, I have been going around getting my signature petition
1st.
signed.
Just to be clear.
It's March 1st.
I understand it's March 1st. Actually, the earliest you could turn in the petitions is March 11th. The Democratic apparatus in my district is asking that the first time petitions be turned in would be March 13th. I have exceeded the number of signatures required, and you probably know.
So
it's 250.
you have filed to run for re-election. You can't do signatures unless you file.
I have filed.
Okay, so you're running. That's good. Well,
qualifications of candidacy.
you just went through a nice list, and we cut you off from probably doing more about what the assembly did do.
Because this is the politics.
The politics of it is you're going to be campaigning in the district here in Northern Virginia.
Absolutely.
Do you still want Governor Northam to resign? Did you ever? I think you said he should. Where are you now on that?
At this point, I believe Governor Northam should continue in office and make some substantial and significant changes to help heal the state.
Is that a reversal? Had you called for him to resign previously?
I had backed the Black Caucus request, and yes, I did support the Democratic Caucus request.
Have you spoken to him at all?
We have spoken, and he very much wants to turn this into something that can be positive.
Well, that's what the delegate in Lisanti is in Maryland saying. She wants to turn it into something, but that makes it difficult. What about?
Well, now I think there's a big difference, though. Now, remember what happened in the Governor Northam's case happened 35 years ago, and he has come out and said he was not in that picture, and it was a picture granted a very offensive picture of blackface.
The issue is how it got on his.
The issue is how it got on his Facebook, on his page, yearbook page.
What about the Attorney General, Mark Herring, acknowledging in the midst of all this horrible time that he too once did a blackface thing?
Well, I think the fact that he was.
Did you call for him to resign?
I did not,
Okay.
and I think, and I'm not aware that any major group or individual, for that matter, has called on the Attorney General to resign.
He volunteered the information either because he thought it might come out or because he wanted to in the moment.
That's right, and he put it in context. He said he put the blackface on because he wanted to portray a rapper. So that's.
Well, whatever the context.
Whatever the context, and again, he was 19, so.
Okay.
I'm not defending.
I'm not asking you to either. I'm just wondering where you are so people will know where you are.
I'm not defending these actions.
And in the worst case, not the worst case, an equally bad case, Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, as you know, a rising star in the state party.
Accused by two women of sexual assault.
Two women have made very serious allegations of sexual assault, one of rape. He's denied it. The Republicans wanted the legislature to have a committee meeting and call people for testimony. You guys opposed that, I think?
Yes.
Where are you on that and Justin Fairfax staying in office?
I do think Justin Fairfax should resign. I think the allegations against the lieutenant governor are actually criminal in nature, and I think there's a certain amount of moral authority that does go along with these elected offices. People do turn to you for leadership, and they look to you as an example. I find the allegations very troubling. I am not in favor of the General Assembly moving forward with any kind of hearing. I think that could jeopardize the possibility of the two women actually getting a full judicial investigation, which is their option. And there are investigations that are going on, or at least being considered, one with the Suffolk County Attorney in Massachusetts, and then, of course, Duke University stepped up and said they were investigating it. I would rather have the investigations be done by professionals and not done in a political theater
But he should resign.
setting.
Before we get off
resign.
of these issues, here's Alice in Silver Spring, Maryland. Alice, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Excuse me. I just wanted to go back to something that was being discussed a few minutes ago about the Northams and the other legislator, the Maryland legislator who used the N-word and so on. And I'm really troubled by this idea that they all are saying, oh, we need to listen more, we need to learn more. This is 2019. I could give them, and I'm sure many people could, about 100 reading suggestions so that they can read history. And I'm thinking about The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, when affirmative action
You think
was
they can
right.
educate themselves?
Well, I think they have a responsibility. I think that this idea that somehow black people are supposed to be the ones who bear the burden and responsibility of educating ignorant white people is a real problem. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be open to discussions, but
But you're saying they should set about educating themselves. I say this to you only because we have several guests today and we're running short of time very quickly. Senator Favola.
I think that's a very fair comment, and thank you for calling in. Absolutely, we should be requiring those types of books in our curriculum in schools, and we should also, frankly, be depicting a more honest presentation of slavery, which some educators have come forward and said, unfortunately, in many cases, it has been not depicted in an accurate and way that it should have been.
Okay. Let me ask. We are short of time. I got to ask you: all 140 seats of the legislature are up this fall.
Absolutely.
These controversies involving the top 3 Democratic leaders has blown a hole in the Democratic forward progress in state legislation. Votes since 2009. You're only a few votes short in the Senate and in the House of taking over the legislature. Are you concerned that this kind of controversy with your top leaders, they won't even be able to campaign for people, will keep you from taking control from the Republicans, that African Americans will stay home because they don't want to vote for the folks who are still in office and who have refused to resign despite the calls for them to do so? I
don't think so. I really believe that Virginians are going to pull together and understand that, maybe the Democrats are not perfect, but we certainly offer an agenda that is far more healing, far more progressive, and far more sensitive to any racial disparities that are going on in the state. And I admit there are some. You guys hammered
Corey Stewart last year. Corey Stewart for things
he was supporting the Confederacy. Right. That's a proactive, very divisive statement that Corey Stewart was running on. And we still have Trump in the White House. And I think that, individuals are very motivated by certain issues that are important to them, and they're going to support candidates that will advocate for those issues.
I want to get back to the legislative session, because one major thing that happened this season was the passing of the incentive package for Amazon's headquarters project in Northern Virginia. You have said that Amazon coming means direct benefits to all Virginians. Not everyone is convinced, though. Yesterday, protesters disrupted BizNow Amazon's event, chanting, "Pay to play is not okay. We want a public hearing today." Pushback from residents and public officials torpedoed New York's Amazon headquarters. How do you think the public should be engaged moving forward with Amazon's arrival in this region?
Well, fortunately, Arlington County and the city of Alexandria have a deep history of having lots of involvement with their citizens. They hold public hearings on just about every issue. What's going on is I think the jurisdictions are going to try to take substantial efforts to increase affordable housing, and the state did add additional money for affordable housing precisely because of the Amazon issue. And the state is not losing money on Amazon. These are tax breaks, so the state would not necessarily receive a certain amount of money, but the end result is the economic activity and the taxes paid by Amazon employees far exceeds the tax break that was given to Amazon. We're talking $3 billion in additional revenue over that 20-year period. So at the end of the day, this is a huge benefit for the state.
You were on the Arlington County Board for 13 years, I think, before.
14, yes.
14, well, close enough.
Oh, it's a year here or there.
But this does have, even though it's a long period of time of bringing these jobs, 25,000 jobs, it's already affecting the rental market and the housing market in Arlington people are talking about prices are going up.
Well, I will say that, Arlington had planned for some growth, and the Amazon movement is really not a significant change from the amount of growth that Arlington had been planning for. I expect that there are some increases in rents, but I also believe that Arlington and Alexandria will come up with some incentive packages to help retain the market rate affordable housing and to help create additional housing. And not everybody's going to be living in Arlington or Alexandria. I mean, these employees will be coming from around the region.
One good thing if Amazon helps make sure that the metro system works.
That might be a very good thing.
Virginia is not going to be New York, though.
No, we're putting $198 million into improving the metro system.
Before you go, Beth in Vienna, Virginia has a question for you. Beth, your turn.
Hi, Coach.
Hi,
Beth.
Hi, Barbara. So,
Hi.
yes, I'm Beth Tudon with the League of Women Voters in Fairfax County. We were disappointed, of course, about the ERA failing, but there was one incredible accomplishment that you already touched on, the Independent Redistricting Commission.
Yeah.
Could you please explain more about what the Independent Redistricting
I'd be happy
Commission
to,
would
Beth.
do?
Thank you so much. This would be a constitutional amendment subject to a referendum, and the commission would consist of 16 individuals. 8 individuals would be lawmakers, and 8 individuals would be experts appointed by retired circuit court judges. This commission would be tasked with coming up with a redistricting plan, and 2/3 of the commission members would have to support the plan. And then the plan would be submitted to the General Assembly. The General Assembly would have to vote up or down without amending that plan. So language was also added to ensure transparency, that public hearings would be part of this whole process. I think we've got a really good construct going forward. I always say to folks, this is one of the most transformational issues that will change politics, because if in fact you have districts that are more moderate, not tilted towards one party or the other, you're going to get lawmakers who are better able to compromise, better willing to compromise. Thank you.
Barbara Favola, thank you so much for joining us.
She represents a District 31 that looks like a lumpy sausage.
It certainly does.
I love my district.
And
you're not lumpy, your district is.
And she is running for re-election. So
Absolutely.
Good luck to you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
This is the Politics Hour. Later in the broadcast, we'll be talking with Evan Glass, who's a member of the Montgomery County Council. Next up is Gerry Connolly, who's a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. Senator Tom Sherwood, Senator Mark Warner.
Yeah, I like that sound. I like the sound of that.
Senator Mark Warner says he will be sponsoring D.C. statehood legislation. That's a position change for him, essentially. He says he is no longer as concerned as he used to be about the imposition of a commuter tax.
Well, the district has a better reputation now but the fact is, and our next guest maybe can comment on it too, the Maryland, Virginia legislators have said they're for statehood for the district, but don't really want to go out of their way to help it make it happen, because they will be subject to the hundreds of thousands of people come into this district to earn money, but pay all their taxes to Richmond and Annapolis, will end up paying some of that money to the district to the tune of billions of dollars. So there are reasons for the suburban members not to support statehood for the district. So, and Steny Hoyer is one of the biggest holdouts of all. He has not signed on to this newest effort to have a vote in the Congress.
And over the objection of the district, Metro, the WMATA board, has voted to keep the current Metro Rail hours. I think we could see that coming, even though the district objected and one board member from the district voted against it. Of course, the current board chairman, Jack Evans, did not vote against it, which would, had he voted against it, then Metro would have been facing a real dilemma.
Right. The district could have vetoed this, and there's already a schedule for the later hours to take effect. but Metro General Manager Paul Wiedefeld and others, the board didn't want to do that because if you lengthen the hours, you shorten the time for
maintenance.
So Jack Evans, as the chairman of the board, I think went along with the people who didn't want it to happen. The mayor was disappointed. She wants those longer hours because there are any number of employees, not just people out having a good time late at night, but late night workers in all kinds of industries need to get home, and right now they can't depend on Metro.
Joining us now by phone is Gerry Connolly. He's a member of the U.S. House of Representatives representing Virginia's 11th District. Congressman Connolly, thank you for joining us.
Great to be with you, Ian, Kojo, and Tom.
Are we talking the Trump investigation? Because I heard you last night on Anderson Cooper's 360 on CNN. You said that we're on the verge of showing that the President of the United States is the head of a criminal enterprise.
That's right.
Congressman Connolly was one of the people in the room questioning Cohen, who is Trump's former lawyer. Could you care to expand on what Tom Sherwood just said?
Sure. We have lots of evidence in front of us, and we had lots more presented by Mr. Cohen several days ago that Mr. Trump and his enterprise have consistently been engaged in flaunting and breaking the law. And at times engaging in conspiracies to do so. So, for example, Mr. Cohen came before our committee and presented, as evidence, an actual check for hush money payments to reimburse Mr. Cohen for the Stormy Daniels hush money and for a Playboy Playmate hush money. And it was actually signed by the president and written by the president from the White House.
I watched almost the entire hearing from the comfort of my sofa. Maybe you can comment on Chairman Elijah Cummings of Maryland. His summation at the end was, I thought everything was going to happen. They were going to pass a collection plate at the end. He was so good at what he said.
Yeah.
But he also said that the next guest could well be, next person to appear might be Alan Weisselberg,
right.
The 40-year CFO of the Trump organization, worked with Trump's father, who knows all. He said, and you said on CNN that he has the keys to the kingdom.
That's right. Yeah, Weisselberg is a very critical figure, and it eerily reminds one of how Al Capone was brought down. Al Capone was brought down ultimately by an accountant who knew where the bodies were buried financially, and his name was Shumway, and he testified and turned. He was a member of Capone's criminal activity, and that is what put Al Capone away and put him in jail.
For tax evasion, ultimately.
For tax evasion, ultimately, that's right, despite murders and all kinds of other crimes. And in this case, Mr. Weisselberg has been with the Trump organization for 40 years. And he knows virtually every financial aspect of how the organization was structured and operated. And as you may have heard from the hearing the other day, I believe Mr. Weisselberg's name was invoked over 30 times as the key to some answer. And so I think he's going to be critical moving forward.
But Republicans have maligned Cohen's character, calling him a liar whose testimony can't be trusted. How did the fact that he previously lied to Congress affect how you and your colleagues regarded him as a witness?
Well, without any examination, that seems like a reasonable concern, although one keeps in mind, while calling this man a convicted liar, which he is, they, of course, are protecting the prevaricator-in-chief, who, according to the Washington Post, is at 6,000 lies in his presidency and counting. We just caught him in another lie in the last 24 hours about Jared Kushner's security clearance.
Yep.
A bold-faced lie where he flat out said, I have never directed anyone to give Kushner a security clearance. Well, we now know that's not true. He did exactly that. So there's some real irony here. But the Congress and the courts all across this country use people who have turned or grant them immunity who are not good guys. The only people who testify before Congress are not altar boys and altar girls. And the most famous case in this regard that got organized crime finally to heal was Joe Valachi in the 60s, who turned. He was a murderer, but he turned on organized crime.
Well,
and provided the first major organization chart for organized crime.
Our legal system depends on people turning. And
that's right.
But let me ask you, as a member of Congress, a Northern Virginia legislator, we just have to ask you to look back into the Commonwealth. What are you hearing on Capitol Hill now among Democrats or just people about what's happened to the leadership? The Democratic Party has essentially imploded with the controversies around the top 3 officials of the state. What are your own feelings about that now going forward? It's a very important political year in Virginia. And what are you hearing about all of that? And what do you think should be done?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean. The Democratic Party has imploded.
Well,
I'm a member of the Democratic Party. I go to a lot of the Democratic meetings. I haven't noticed that we've imploded.
Well, I mean, just the top leadership,
the
governor, the lieutenant governor, and the attorney general.
But let's look how Democrats have responded to that compared to how Republicans are protecting Trump. Within 24 hours, Democrats called for Ralph Northam's resignation, condemned what happened, and did that. After the second allegation against Justin Fairfax, almost unanimously Democrats called for his resignation. So, I mean, I think Democrats have been very swift, not reluctant, to address this. And by the way, those calls stand.
And they're still in office.
Tom, if you got a better solution, let me know.
I'm a reporter. You have the solutions. I'm just the person who listens.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, look, I think longer term it's not a tenable situation for either one of them because I think they've lost the moral authority to govern, and they're learning that every day. They're disinvited from speeches. They're not welcome at political events. The legislature kind of snubbed them when it finally ended its session by not doing the traditional courtesy call on the governor to inform him. These are little and big ways of saying to both of them, you're not welcome. We're not going to work with you. And they're both kind of men without a country at this point.
Gerry Connolly is a member of the U.S. House of Representatives representing Virginia's 11th District. Congressman Connolly, thank you so much for joining us.
My great pleasure, and have me back.
We certainly will. Joining us in studio now is Evan Glass. He's a member of the Montgomery County Council. Evan Glass, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Coach.
If you have questions or comments for Evan Glass, give us a call, 800-433-8850. Send us a tweet at Kojo Show, email to kojo@wamu.org, or you can go to our website, kojoshow.org, watch the live video stream of the conversation, see what this new Montgomery County Council member looks like, or you can ask a question or make a comment there. Tom Sherwood, speaking of councils, D.C. Council member Jack Evans, who we just mentioned as chairman of the Metro Board, has been subpoenaed, or documents relating to him have been subpoenaed by a federal grand jury because of a digital sign company, Digi Outdoor Media, with whom the council member was at least peripherally involved at some point.
At least
and
playing
this is an ongoing, yes, and this is an ongoing
with
situation.
Donald McCord. Well, just to be absolutely clear, the federal subpoena went to the district government for any and all records, and within that subpoena, Councilmember Evans is the only member mentioned because he had the most dealings with him, as the Post is certainly well laid out in the story about getting monies and different things. Evans contends that he turned over everything. He's been cooperating. He has no concerns. He thinks that while some people have criticized him for ethically maybe coming close to the line or putting the toe on the line of considering gifts but not accepting them or returning them almost immediately after getting them, that it looks bad. I think the chairman, Mendelson of the council, said there's a lot of smelly stuff around this, but I haven't seen anything illegal yet, and that's kind of where we are legally in this case. But Evans has been severely hurt by this because people want to know, did he accept illegal gifts in order to prepare for some legislation which he did not introduce. But the FBI has been looking into this, and now we have subpoenas, which was issued last September. It's just now being made public.
And a lot of it has to do with a company that Jack Evans started up called NSC Consulting, which was first reported on by Jeffrey Anderson.
Yeah, but that was just to establish his law firm because the initials are his wife. But you just have to remember that Donald McCord is being sued by the Securities and Exchange Commission for squandering $2 million in investor money, and again, it's not the best person to have testifying maybe against you. But just like in all these other legal cases, let's find out what the facts are. We need to know Jack Evans is up for re-election
because
next
Evans
year.
said that he
turned back everything that he got.
McCord
His son
did,
didn't get
so-
a job, but
so
we
we'll
need
see
to
what-
clear it up. He's going to be running for re-election this fall.
Evan Glass, first, congratulations on becoming a council member.
Thank you very much.
For people who
A
might not,
media person.
from people who might not be familiar with you and your background, this is something that Tom Sherwood usually checks on. What are you more interested in? What are you most interested in about Evan Glass's background?
He worked for Chicken Noodle News.
I thought it was
CNN.
Clinton News Network.
Well, depends on how your point of political view, which I don't have. But you were a journalist and now you're an elected official. What's the difference?
What's the difference? I like getting things done. That's what the difference is.
Are you more careful how you talk? One of the council members to me said it was one thing to be an activist, but when he got elected as a council member, he had to start weighing everything he said because we can twist it in any way we want to.
Well, I'm aware of how good you are at twisting people's words, if that's what you're telling me.
Well, I just shine light on them.
Well, sunshine is a good policy. But, I worked at CNN for 12 years. I covered Congress, national politics, presidential campaigns, and I absolutely loved it.
Do you wish you were up there right now?
Absolutely not, because, this week, if I were still at CNN, I either would have been covering the Michael Cohen hearing, or I probably would have been at Vietnam with President Trump covering that. And while I was at CNN for 12 years, I had moved to downtown Silver Spring as the holes were still in the ground and realized that I love the walkable, livable, transit-oriented community. And years later, as I'm walking to the metro, the sidewalks were crumbling and there was no crosswalk to get across the street. And I thought to myself, I know how Congress works, I know how the federal government works, but who do I talk to in my own neighborhood about fixing sidewalks? And that's what got me hooked on municipal government. And 15, 16 years later, here I am, an at-large member of the Montgomery County Council.
You got more votes than any of their four at-large people running
In the November election?
in the November election.
You are on the Transportation and Environment Committee on the council. First, let's talk Metro, because County Executive Mark Elrich reiterated that he thinks the D.C.-backed plans to open the Metro at 5:30 a.m. instead of 5 a.m. would negatively affect Montgomery County bus riders. Apparently, the Metro board agreed. What do you think a long-term solution for Metro hours would look like?
So at first, I have to say I share the frustration that all the riders have, and the frustration for the hourly workers who work late at night. It's not an ideal situation for anybody, but the WMATA board, the Metro board, after getting an infusion of nearly $500 million to shore up the infrastructure, which was critically important because it had been denied the money to improve our infrastructure for years. But at that point in time, we were told that these systems would be fixed within 2 years. And we're now at that 2-year juncture, and something's still not right. And so what the Metro Board and the organization as a whole needs to start doing is communicating better. We need to really understand what this timeline is. And I'm not quite sure why we can't chew gum and walk at the same time, fix our infrastructure system, improve our operations, and bring this system back to the world-class operational system that it once was.
Mike Goldman, the Montgomery County representative on the board, said that, if we went forward with longer hours, it could endanger federal funds, could affect the Purple Line, all kinds of, and you told the Bethesda Beat magazine that we need to find a way to increase service and have a safe metro system. It seems to me a lot of people keep defining the problem. We seem to know what the problem is, but why don't we? Does it require just spending more money to have more maintenance workers working at night in these off hours so that you can extend those service hours? Because I just know so many people now with Uber and Lyft, they don't need Metro. They can spend $5 or $6, get to where they want to go, rather than spending a few dollars on Metro and having to descend into underground and wait and wait and wait.
There certainly is a demographic that does not need Metro for late night enjoyment or getting back from work or whatever it is they need to get home to. But many people do. But many people do. That's the bottom line. And being an elected official in Montgomery County, I need to make sure that our residents are being able to commute on the system in a safe and efficient manner. When I moved to Montgomery County, to downtown Silver Spring. I took the red line from Silver Spring to Union Station, where CNN operated, and I did so every day without thinking about life, limb, or disruptions, and we need to get back to that time.
Well, now you ride the bus, because I wanted to stay with Metro for a while.
That was my trick question. I have a trick. You go ahead and ask.
Go ask your trick question.
Well, when you got elected, you said you would ride the bus, and you put out a video on the day that you rode the bus. But, you're an at-large council member in Montgomery County. It's not a few city blocks. It's a huge county. How often do you just ride the bus to work and then get in the car and drive around the county? How much of that is image, and how much do you really ride the bus?
Because it took you 80 minutes to get to work the first time when you rode the bus. And
that's
that
because he's
means
taking all those
took
videos.
You 80 minutes to get back home, and that's 2 hours and 40 minutes per day riding the bus. Is that something that is that sustainable?
So
for you?
So my background, having lived in downtown Silver Spring, my husband and I had one car for the two of us. And for 10 years, we had one car. When we moved into a single-family house, I told our realtor that I wanted to make sure we didn't have to get a second car. And I was the one who took Metro, took the bus, and walked whenever possible. I had to get a second car when I announced my candidacy for a county council at-large seat. It's a 500-square-mile jurisdiction. As you well know, it's vast. And so while I do have to drive to fulfill my obligations as a county council member.
Okay, what kind of car is it?
I drive the Honda Fit, which I've had for about 10, 12 years now. But I do take public transit as often as possible. That was my pledge when I first got sworn in, and I'm holding myself to it.
This week, a purple line. You had a follow-up to that?
Go ahead. There's one more transportation question to be good. I have another issue.
This week, a Purple Line tunnel under Flower Avenue was partially completed ahead of schedule. The project has been controversial because of noise complaints and late night and early morning construction. What do you think of how the Purple Line has been progressing so far, and how do you balance the desire to build it in a timely manner with respect for people's rest, their sleep, their sanity?
Yeah, that's a real problem. And it appears that the State Department of Transportation and the Purple Line Partners has been a little deaf to the noise complaints that have been real legitimate, especially in the areas not far from me where the tunnel has recently at least been breached, both sides of it. The other aspect is the timeliness and the cost overruns that are already mounting. I want to engage more with the state and figure out why we're having this problem. As a former journalist, I believe that oversight and accountability are extremely important in government functions. And I'm troubled by what I'm learning in these short 3 months that I've already been on the council as it relates to the progress of that project.
Let me ask you about legislation. So it's being called just cause legislation. It would dramatically change rental agreements in the state. The Montgomery County delegation, I think the council supports it. Right now, landlords can give renters, and there are zillions of renters in the state, 60-day notice with no reason, just that the contract's up, the term's up, and you have to get out. That this just cause would say the landlord has to give a reason, a just cause reason, in order to kick someone out. That housing is such a crisis, you can't just have the landlords arbitrarily wanting to kick people out. Is that the right idea about the legislation, and what are your views on it?
So the just cause eviction legislation has been sponsored by my friend and my personal delegate, Janelle Wilkins, and I have been supportive of that effort. What that effort does, it's limited to Montgomery County, and it basically says that if you are a good tenant in good standing and you pay your rent and you are not a nuisance to the community, you should be able to stay in that home.
Why can't Montgomery County just pass it? Why does it have to be a
There's
legislature?
a quirk in state law that requires the state to change those types of rental agreements. But
housing crisis is a big deal. So
it is. Well, and Kojo was in Silver Spring talking about housing and how it relates to school, and this is another way that there is disruption sometimes among the students, and when a student has concerns about where they're going to be living or being uprooted, that has other effects, ripple effects in the school system. So I think just cause eviction is one way to create more stability within our within our residential population.
Here is Marie in Durwood, Maryland. Marie, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I want to know what this Montgomery County Council member's opinion is about the fact that today Montgomery County, below the agricultural preserve line, has been deliberately and willfully overpopulated and overdeveloped, becoming a deadly county, dangerous, filled with violence, ruining our quality of life, especially for longtime native-born Montgomery County residents. Yet if you live 1 inch north of the agricultural preserve, those citizens are treated like kings and queens, giving enormous property tax breaks with no threat to their quality of life. Yet we, long-term residents, are watching our county just literally go down the sewer in terms of everything that made Montgomery County once the most beautiful county in the country.
So, Councilmember Glass, you know what Marie really thinks.
Well, I appreciate you calling in, Marie, but I'm going to have to disagree with you, quite frankly, on a host of the things that you said. Montgomery County is a beautiful place to live. We are richly diverse. We love our neighbors regardless of where they were born, who they love, what language they speak. And that is why I chose to move to Montgomery County more than 20 years ago. And we do have a population of about 1.1 million people, and most of those do live below the agricultural reserve. But the agricultural reserve has been recognized as a national treasure. And we in Montgomery County are in the forefront of preserving 1/3 of our space, which is the agricultural reserve, so that we can have farm-to-table living. We can encourage farmers to live out there and protect our natural waterways and environment.
Well, let's talk about corruption. The chief operating officer of the county's economic development department is pled guilty for embezzling $7 million. I read somewhere that you said that there are aspects of the county government that are, quote, screaming for better oversight. How bad is the problem of corruption in Montgomery County, or potential corruption?
Well, within a week or two of being sworn into the Montgomery County Council, one of the things from being a journalist to being an elected official is I had all this information easily supplied to me, and some of that information was the Inspector General's report and conversations directly had with those investigators. And what Peter Bang was able to do during his tenure, steal nearly $7 million from the Economic Development Department, there were a lot of systemic holes that we need to plug. And by shining light, by having full-throated, open conversations, some of that has been bureaucratically corrected. But I'm committed to making sure that we continue shining that light, have more oversight.
More aggressive oversight.
More aggressive oversight. You can go to my YouTube page, you can see my 8 minutes of questioning with the IG, and when I asked where else they have looked, they basically said, we haven't really looked anywhere else. So I can't answer your question. I don't believe that there is a problem in Montgomery County. I like to think that we have wonderful staff, we have great employees, but we can always do a better job.
Speaking of bureaucratically corrected, you'll be introducing a bill soon that would address pay equity between male and female county employees. Recently reporting from the Bethesda Beat magazine showed that there are significant gaps between the annual salaries of male and female employees, significant gaps in their overtime pay. Why do you think these gaps persist, and what would your bill do to combat them?
Well, thank you for asking. So next Tuesday, I'll be introducing the Montgomery County Pay Equity Act. And what that is going to do is forbid the county operation from requesting salary history as part of the hiring process. Because what we know is that when you rely on an applicant's history, you only perpetuate the pay inequity that exists. In the state of Maryland, a woman makes 79 cents approximately for every dollar a man makes. And that is even worse for women of color. Black women make 69 cents per dollar, and Latinas make 47 cents per dollar. And then that doesn't even include women who have left the workforce to raise their family. So when they're applying for jobs, current policy allows managers to use that salary history.
Right.
And
perpetuates itself.
Absolutely. And so what I have found in hiring my own team, my own office, particularly my chief of staff, who is a Latina, that they were asking for salary history. And I said, this isn't right. And you're asking me of it, right? And my team. And so we're going to ban that and try to correct this. And on Tuesday at the press conference, when I announce this, I'm going to be sharing some pretty alarming data that shows that this is a real, pervasive, and systemic problem in the county.
Evan Glass is a member of the Montgomery County Council. And, you know, you, like Tom Sherwood, used to have a real job before you got into politics. You used to be in the news media. Tom Sherwood used to report for NBC4. He retired from that job last year. But wait, what's this coming into the room right now?
Goodness.
Somebody's bringing a cake.
Is this cake union made?
This cake is probably union made, but this cake is because this is the 10-year anniversary of Tom Sherwood's service here on the Politics Hour, the service for which he left a real job to continue to perform this service. And so we would just like to say thank you very much for the past 10 years. Hopefully we will get many more years with you on the Politics Hour. And this cake, which you will have to consume the entire cake before this broadcast ends,
I'll share it with the newsroom.
Is our way of saying to you, thank you very much.
Well, you know, as a political analyst, I get to give my opinion more. As a reporter, you know, I always had to find somebody else to say what I wanted to say. But this is thank you very much for the cake. It looks very good.
And because you get to give your opinion
I know you
more,
had
you
nothing to do
you
with it.
have about 30 seconds to talk about Bryce Harper leaving the Nationals and heading to the battery-throwing Philly fans, Philadelphia Phillies.
60% of the fans of the Nats come from Virginia. It is a huge economic development sports industry in the city. The Nats this year, when they're going to have a big gambling casino at the.
So you're saying they're going to lose money now that Bryce Harper's gone?
Nats. Bryce Harper put butts in the seats. Now we'll all be there on April the 2nd when he returns in that Phillies uniform, and we'll all be booing. I'll be more hoarse than normal.
We have an announcement about Monday's show. Virginia Attorney General Mark Herring will be in studio in his first sit-down interview since the scandals broke involving the top 3 officials in the Commonwealth. So you'll want to tune in for that. Also, you'll be getting...
I'm not busy Monday.
There's that couch that you have at your house. Also, you'll be getting a preview of our next roadshow coming up on March 19th on gentrification in the district's art scene. We'll look at how small independent theaters can survive in a rapidly changing Washington environment. That all starts Monday at noon. Evan Glass, once again, congratulations and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Kojo. Thank you, Tom.
See
Congratulations.
you Monday
Tom.
at noon. Until then, thank you for listening. I'm Kojo Namdi.
The Kojo Namdi Show is produced by Ruth Tam, Mark Gunnery, Julie Deppenbrock, and Margaret Barthel. Our managing producer is Angelisa Schroepsdorf, and our senior producer is Mana Kashfi. Our intern is Sydney Grannon, and our engineer is Josephine Neonai. For past shows and more content, visit kojoshow.org.